Hello everyone, it's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad, video number 214. Today we want to talk about the possibilist. The possibilist is something like an optimist, certainly not a pessimist. And the man who coined that term, I believe, is William Ury. I was listening to a recent podcast and his interview was fascinating. So I want to share with some things that I learned about the man, been around a long time, doing what he's doing as a negotiator. And he is very well known in the field, written many books as well. So let me share my screen and introduce you a little bit that I know about William Ury. Now, he's written this particular book very recently, and that's why I believe he's been uh, interviewed, called Possible: How We Survive and Thrive in the Age of Conflict. And he's written many books, including being a co-author of a very popular book on negotiation, which is Getting to Yes. So William is, as you may notice at the top here, is called William Ury, Possibilist. And together we make things possible. And he's a negotiator, he's an anthropologist, and of course, a best-selling author. And to discover there's no problem, big or small, that we cannot solve. We can learn to transform our conflicts creatively and constructively. So those are the sort of things that he has been involved with. There's some wonderful stories in the podcast about him helping negotiate at Camp David during Jimmy Carter's time between Egypt and Israel. And that has gone on to be over 45 years. That agreement is still in place on about the Sinai Peninsula. And there was certain techniques that they used that were very helpful. This picture here is the President of the United States, Joe Biden. And he's off. This is very recent because the book was only out in February. And the book that is in his hand is the book Possible by William Ury. So that is, uh, I think, says a lot about the man and what he's been able to do in his life. Now, as far as William Ury, there's a lot of techniques. And the podcast is from Tim Ferriss. It's podcast number 721, I believe. It's published on the 15th of February this year. It's about an hour and 45 minutes. There's a lot of gems in there. If you are interested, I would highly recommend you listen to it. Some of the things that I noticed that he said when he was discussing many things is just take frequent breaks when you are negotiating with people. And he's a big believer in the power of silence. Doesn't have to keep talking. Maybe he says the one of the most important things is to do far more listening. It's not about talking, it's about being a persuasive listener. And also show the other side respect. The other side's dignity may not mean much to you, but it means everything to them. And so you should show them basic human respect. There's many items. And, he speaks about Nelson Mandela and some of the other fights and arguments that happen in the world and conflicts that have been resolved. Um, he mentions, for example, what happened in Ireland, where there was conflicts for years, and that's been resolved. And of course, South Africa, where it was the apartheid and what was going on there. And he, in fact, quotes Nelson Mandela, where he said that you know there's a lot of people will say it's impossible, but it's not. It's always impossible until it's been done, and then it is shown that it was possible after all. So he's got some really interesting techniques. I would highly recommend finding out more about him, maybe even reading the book, possible. It depends how interested you are, but even in negotiating with family, friends, and in your own communities, a lot of the thoughts and a lot of the techniques that he's shown and a lot of the stories he tells. It's a fascinating podcast on how he's been involved and how he put into practice a lot of the techniques. And he said the main three elements are you have to influence yourself. Sometimes you got to do a lot of thinking and self awareness and self thoughts of what's going on with you. And then once you can influence yourself, he calls that going to the balcony and thinking. You go and build a golden bridge where you can reach out to the others and say, well, what would they be of interest? What is it that they're looking for? And the other side is influence the whole, the community, get other people involved. And those are the three elements. It's very important. And so he explains that. It's very well, it's a wonderful podcast. I must inform you. And hey, I've always tried to be an optimist, but maybe I'll try and be a possibilist like William Ury. So with that, I'll say adios, au revoir, wishing you, your family and friends, and maybe there will be some possibilists in your circle. So I say au revoir, adios, wishing you, your family and friends lots of love and laughter until next time. Bye for now from Fred and Notes of a Nomad.